Those are questions that we continue to ask as it relates to the Deshaun Watson situation. That continues to be really topic number one as far as the National Football League is currently concerned. When will the league act? What will the league do? And I continue to believe that paid leave is creeping back onto the radar screen, even though the commissioner took it off the table in March. The story from Mark Maskey from Friday suggests that the league is preparing to impose a significant suspension. We had reported on Thursday that the NFL Players Association expects it to be unprecedented, and 1 year as a proposed suspension would indeed be unprecedented. There hasn't been a player who otherwise is able to play. Mike Vick ended up missing 2 years because he was in prison. Watson available to play, not prosecuted, not charged, but potentially suspended for a year by the NFL. Yes, unprecedented. And the NFLPA, as we reported and as Maskey confirmed, intends to defend Watson by pointing to owners, 3 of them specifically, Snyder, Patriots owner Robert Kraft, and Cowboys owner Jerry Jones, as individuals who potentially were involved in violations of the conduct policy and did not face significant consequences at all. Because the conduct policy says owners and members of team management are held to a higher standard, the argument will be that whatever you do to Watson has to be in proportion to these other individuals, to what punishment they received. And you potentially start down the path of having mini trials within the broader question of what to do with Deshaun Watson, because you need to find out, what did you know about Snyder? What did you know about Kraft? What did you know about the Jones situation, specifically coming from the voyeurism scandal from 2015 that was never investigated by the league? There's no evidence that the Cowboys even told the league about it. It was all handled very quietly and it went away. What you did or didn't do to those 3 becomes relevant to what you do or don't do to Deshaun Watson. And what it also does, and my guess is the phone lines were buzzing to 345 Park Avenue after these stories came out last week, specifically from Washington, Boston, and Dallas. Hey, I don't want this Watson thing to morph into a big, ugly mess for me. So handle it. And there continues to be a possibility of a settlement of the Watson situation where the league and the union and Watson would come together and reach the terms of an agreed suspension. The problem continues to be this, though. As long as Watson insists he did nothing wrong, how do you ever settle this? At some point, he has to acknowledge responsibility if he is going to accept a punishment. I don't think it's enough to say, I'm just accepting 8 games to get this over with. I still insist I did nothing wrong. Maybe they find a way to thread that needle because he has pending litigation, because it's not like he can come out and say he did something that violated anyone's rights. Maybe he can agree that his practice, which seems pretty well documented at this point, of having a wide array of private massage therapists and potentially trying to make those massage sessions become sexual encounters, that in and of itself violates terms of the personal conduct policy. And that's what he's being punished for, not violating anyone's rights. So it's not an easy situation for anyone. The league has been investigating. Maskey's story answers some questions, but raises some questions about how thorough and complete the investigation really is and has been. 11 of the 24 plaintiffs have been interviewed. Why not all 24? Have they said no? Have they decided they don't need to talk to them? How many documents have been reviewed? Maskey says relevant documents have been reviewed by Lisa Friel, who's in charge of these investigations. There are plenty of documents that would fall under the heading of relevant documents. Pages and pages of deposition transcripts that have been generated and are still being generated in these cases. There are lawsuits that are still being filed. See, that's why I keep coming back to the idea that he should be put on paid leave. And I know that Browns fans will be up in arms about that, because what it does, it takes him off the field for this year. And then next year, presumably, if this is all over by then, is when he would serve an unpaid suspension. So you could lose him for 17 games this year and 8 or 9 games next year, or 12 games next year, or all of next year. Who knows? The Browns fans and the Browns organization just wants this to be over, and they want to move on with Deshaun Watson as their franchise quarterback. And I get it. I understand it. I've said this from the get-go. He needs to settle these cases. He needs to resolve these cases. He needs to have his reckoning, and he needs to move on. And he definitely needed to do it when he was traded to the Browns, because Browns fans should not be put in this position where they allow their fandom to cloud their judgment as to what they should or shouldn't be saying and doing to defend Deshaun Watson. And I understand it's very difficult to do. If you're a passionate fan, you do everything you can to defend any of your players who are perceived to be under attack. You shouldn't have to do that. That's my point. I don't take any issue with the Browns fans who get up in arms because we've written another story about, oh, here's another story. Well, I understand that you're upset, but you're upset because your favorite team has put you in this position where you become part of the crowd, part of the mob that is blindly defending Deshaun Watson, regardless of whether or not he did something for which he deserves some sort of punishment. Finally, remember this. And I thought this was a significant statement from Kim Ogg, the Harris County District Attorney, who recently had a podcast interview with Mike Meltzer. Exoneration did not come from the finding by the grand juries to not indict Deshaun Watson. She said that herself. That is contrary to Rusty Hardin's attempt to bootstrap the lack of an indictment into no punishment whatsoever. Hey, all the grand jury had to do was find probable cause. They didn't find probable cause. That means he's free and clear and didn't do anything wrong. No. And the DA said it herself. It does not mean exoneration. There are other forms of justice that can be done here. Civil, through the lawsuits, and as she said, administrative, basically what the NFL does. Justice comes in many shapes and sizes. And I continue to believe that the Harris County Prosecutor's Office was influenced by the fact that there will be other ways for Watson to be held accountable for what he did or didn't do. And that trying to prosecute him with that very high bar of proof beyond a reasonable doubt, that was something that they were not interested in doing because they feared they would lose. No prosecutor wants to take on a case that the prosecutor fears they will lose. You would rather devote your resources to crimes that you think you can make stick against a given defendant. It sends a bad message to the public when the prosecutor starts swinging and missing on these efforts to put people that the prosecutor believes committed a crime behind bars or on probation or whatever the final consequence would be. So, bottom line, civil justice system continues with 24 cases, soon to be 26. Eventually, it maybe be more. And the NFL continues its investigation. And at some point, they say they want to get this done by training camp. And by done, that means propose a suspension, have Judge Sue L. Robinson, an independent voice, do her hearing, have Roger Goodell in a position to handle any appeal. There's no way this is all getting done by training camp, especially if the NFLPA is going to exercise its right to defend Deshaun Watson by saying your punishment that you're proposing is not proportionate to the punishments that were imposed on Snyder, Kraft, and Jones. It's going to take time. And the biggest factor that continues to hover over all of this, there will be more developments. There will be more lawsuits. You know, if there's a belief when the NFL does whatever it's going to do with Deshaun Watson that it wasn't sufficient, that may draw more people out. They may decide to sue. Or if they see that Watson was suspended for a year, they may say, well, maybe this really is something that I should pursue. So until we get to the middle of March of next year, assuming that the filing of the first lawsuit got Deshaun Watson to stop whatever it was that he was doing that gave rise to these lawsuits, that's when the statute of limitations will expire, middle of March of next year. Until we get to there could be more, up to 66, according to the reporting from Jenny Vrentas of the New York Times. So not an easy situation for the league. And there are voices in the league office that are advocating very strongly in favor of Watson not playing until these cases are resolved. And their position, as we reported last week, has gotten stronger in light of recent developments. All of it began with the HBO Real Sports feature 3 weeks and 6 days ago, the filing of 2 more lawsuits, the Times report, some of the things that Rusty Hardin said, and it just feels like it's a snowball that has gotten larger and larger over the past few weeks, and who knows how much larger it will continue to become.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.